Hello my lovelies and welcome back. If you've been here before, hello, how are you? Hope you're keeping safe out there. Really hope everybody is safe and keeping well and keeping positive. Just remember there's always an end in sight. And for people that have never seen me before, hello, my name is Sally and what I do on my channel is I talk about true crime cases. I will start doing conspiracies and urban legends as well, but I get so involved in these murder cases that I just keep forgetting. So I will be doing those eventually, so keep your eyes peeled. I came across a really interesting case that I think people of my age or older might know who I'm talking about, and they might have heard of this case because it was such a big deal at the time. And people of my age will know the films. I mean, I know for me that one of the films that this girl was in was one of my all-time favourite films as a kid. I watched that with my grandparents constantly, and that film is All Dogs Go to Heaven. So if you know that, then you know who I'm talking about, and I'm talking about Judith Barsi. But a lot of people don't know who she is, and they don't know what happened to her, and it's completely tragic and it's completely awful. So I thought I would talk about it today, and we can discuss Judith and just remember her for the beautiful person she was. So Judith was an upcoming Hollywood actress. She was a child actress at the time, and she lived in Los Angeles, California, obviously, where all the actresses were living at the time. And she was actually shot and killed by her own father, Joseph. And the reason that he killed his daughter is essentially because he was jealous and he was a bitter and twisted old man. But we'll get into that later. So Joseph Barsi, who was he? Well, he was a Hungarian immigrant who had fled Hungary during something that's called the uprising, and that was in 1956. I would recommend you research that if you want to, because I did research it and I'm not clever enough to understand what it means. But I do know that thousands of Hungarian-born natives fled their country at the time, and Joseph ended up in America, and he actually ended up in New York City. He was only 19 at the time that he arrived. He was an okay person. He had a few troubles. His father left him when he was a child, and he resented his mother for that, and he blamed her, and this is why he saw all women as whores. And he was bullied at school because he had a tiny bit of a speech impediment from what I can gather. And then when he came to America, he was further picked on because he had an accent. So he was a little bit picked on, he was a little bit bullied, his father abandoned him. You know, there's something that a lot of people actually go through and they don't end up killing their children. I'm just pointing it out right there, right now, okay? Whilst in New York, he met his first wife, and they got married very quickly, and they had 2 children together. They had a son and they had a daughter. This relationship was very toxic. Joseph started to drink and he became violent, he became abusive, and eventually, I think it was after sort of 15 years, his first wife had just had enough. She was sick to death of his nonsense, and she divorced him, and she took the kid and she fled. Took the kids and fled, sorry. After his failed marriage, and then when his divorce was finalised, Joseph decided to get a new start, you know? So he moved to Los Angeles, California. Now, while he was there, approximately a few months after he moved there, he met a young lady called Maria. I do know her surname, but I'm not going to say it because I can't pronounce it. But she is also Hungarian, so you can imagine. She also fled from Hungary in about 1956. She was younger than Joseph though. She moved to Los Angeles and she started working in a restaurant as a server. And this is where Joseph met her. He went in for a meal one day and they hit it off instantly. There was a massive connection. He treated Maria like a princess or like a queen. He was very charming, he was very charismatic, and this led to the couple getting married very quickly. And they got married in August of 1977. Not long afterwards, Maria discovered she was pregnant, and she discovered she was having a little girl. So in comes Judith Barsi on the 6th of June 1978, a screaming bundle of beautiful joy. Maria was ecstatic. She loved being her mother. She wanted her to amount to great things. She knew that she had something special about her. And Maria just doted on her little girl. She just doted on her. Joseph, however, hated her. He portrayed the image of a loving dad initially. They would go on trips together and they would do like the normal family thing, but eventually it became very apparent to everybody around that he despised his child. People don't really know why. It could be because the attention was away from him, from his wife. It could be because Judith obviously amounted to great success and he was jealous because he could never provide that kind of money for his family. I don't know. I honestly don't know why he ended up resenting his daughter, but he did. And that's a big part of this story. A huge part. He hated her. They lived the first 5 years of Judith's life, just like I said, as a normal family, in a little apartment, just doing their thing, being a family. And then when Judith was 5, her mother took her ice skating in San Fernando Valley, and whilst there was a company that was filming a commercial for something. I don't actually know what the commercial was for, but they were filming a commercial and they happened to see Judith and thought that she would be perfect for future commercials that they had. So they approached Maria and asked if they were interested. Maria was very interested, okay? She had been training her daughter since the second that she could speak and the second she could walk in etiquette and how to be a Hollywood actress. She wanted this for her daughter. She wanted her daughter to be an actress, and she was really hoping that one day she'd just get snapped up. And as fate had it, the commercial was there that day, and they ended up signing her up, and she did 70, 80 commercials within that first year. Her first commercial was actually in 1983, and she did a commercial for Donald Duck orange juice. And if you've seen the commercial, she is the cutest little thing in the entire world. She's just adorable. The only thing that the directors seem to pick up on is that Judith was very small for her age. She was very petite, just her stature was very small, so they always thought she was a lot smaller. So when it came to future roles, she was actually cast in a lot of roles that were for younger people because of her size. So like I said, she went on to do 70, 80 more commercials in the first few years of her life. First few years of her acting life, sorry. She was in a McDonald's commercial. She did Jif peanut butter. She was in Lay's crisps. She did fruity, chewy things. She was just in lots of commercials, and she was so cute. Everybody always mentioned of how she was destined to do big things and how she was just so good to work with. She was so cheerful, and she was just a beautiful girl inside and out, and directors loved working with her because she was just the cutest little button in the whole wide world. By 1984, Judith actually made her debut appearance in a sitcom, and this was NBC's Fatal Attraction. I personally haven't seen it. Is that really bad? I don't know if that's good. If I've got any American subscribers or people that watch my videos, can you tell me what that is? Is it good? Should I watch it? I don't want to waste my time, but also I like to watch things. And later that year she also appeared in another sitcom called Jessie, which was a cop drama show, sitcom, whatever they want to call it. And then in 1985 she was in many other things. To name a few, she was in The Twilight Zone, The Fall Guy, and Kids Don't Tell. That's a couple of sitcoms and shows that she was in. And then in 1986 it was another fantastic year for Judith. She actually managed to be cast in her first ever movie, which is very exciting. And this movie was called Eye of the Tiger. Again, I've not seen it. Should I? Is it a Rocky Balboa thing? Because I always feel like it will be, but I don't know. So could you just tell me? She was also in Punky Brewster, and she also appeared in Cheers that year. I love Cheers. Cheers is like one of my favourite shows. Everybody knows your name. 1987 was also a very fantastic year for her acting career. She was in many other sitcoms and commercials, and she also played the daughter in Jaws 4, and that was a big deal for her because that was nominated for awards and it was part of the film festival that year, and it was just a really good stepping stone to the rest of her career. And then in 1988, my birthday, she appeared in Growing Pains, and she was also on the Tracy Ullman Show. Again, just to name a few, there's many more. There's a list of them all online, you can see them. She was in lots of sitcoms and commercials because she was just so wonderful. Also that year, she did the voice for her first animated films. So she did the voice for Ducky from The Land Before Time, which is one of the reasons that I know her, and one of the reasons I think a lot of people will know her. She plays the little green dinosaur, so she plays Ducky in The Land Before Time. And then towards the end of her life, she did the recording for All Dogs Go to Heaven. My favourite film. Absolutely love it. Made my childhood. I didn't realise it was her until recently, but she plays the voice of Anne-Marie, and Anne-Marie is a little orphan girl who befriends the dog and tries to get him to go back to heaven. It's a really good film. If you haven't seen that, you have to see that, okay? Judith's success was massive. She was making up to $100,000 in 1 year. By the time she was 10, she had lots of money in the bank, and the family were able to enjoy some of this. They were able to buy their own house, and they had some cars, and they were just living a family life and spending Judith's money as appropriately. I'm not saying that they were doing it like they shouldn't be doing it. They were doing it as they could do it, so like a house, a roof over her head, and things of that nature. And they're also putting some away so that when she turned 18, she would have money and she could go and do whatever she needed to do. Even though career-wise, it was going fantastically for Judith. She was a massive success in Hollywood. Home life wasn't as great. Pretty much from the second that Judith was starting to be cast and she was starting to become recognisable and she was making money, Joseph became abusive. He started drinking very heavily. He was very physically and emotionally abusive to both Judith and his wife Maria. Maria was afraid of him. Judith was afraid of him. He repeatedly told them on many occasions that he was going to kill them and then kill himself. In fact, on one occasion, she was going off to film Jaws 4, and as they were leaving, he actually held a knife to Judith's throat and said to his wife, "If you do not come back, I will find you, I will hunt you down, I will find you, and I will kill you." That is excessive in itself. That is absolutely awful. Also during this time, he didn't actually try and hide the fact that he was abusive or that he was jealous of Judith. There was an incident that a neighbour spoke about after the crimes where Judith had bought herself a new kite out of her money, and she was flying it around in the back garden, and Joseph came out and he took the kite off her and she started to cry. And she was saying to her dad, "Please don't break it, please don't break it, it's one of my favourite toys, I absolutely love it," all that kind of stuff. And the neighbour popped her head over the fence and just was like, "Oh, is everything okay?" And he said, "Look at my little brat, she won't even share her toy with me." Judith then began to cry even more. The neighbour was kind of stood there in shock. So at this point, because Judith wouldn't shut her mouth, in his words, not mine, he yanked the kite from the sky and broke it into tiny pieces, chucked it at her feet and stormed inside. I mean, that's awful. Why would you do that to a child anyway? That is obviously emotional abuse, and that's just one snippet of the things that he would do to poor little Judith. However, in the summer of 1988, Judith's behaviour began to change. She wasn't the happy-go-lucky girl that she used to be. She began to pull out her eyelashes and she began to pull out her eyebrows. She pulled the whiskers off her cat. She was clearly in distress. She would get nosebleeds constantly. It was just very clear that she was emotionally distressed from everything that was happening. And one day she actually did break down to her manager and she told her manager everything that was happening. So the manager obviously approached Maria and told Maria, "You need to get your daughter help." And in all fairness to Maria, she did do that. She took Judith to a child psychologist, and the child psychologist became very concerned about the behaviour she was hearing. So she did her right thing, her legal thing, and she called CPS. CPS came out, they spoke to both the parents. Joseph was pretending to be this really nice guy. However, Maria did meet with them separately, and she told them that, please don't take my daughter away. I am going to divorce him and I am going to leave him. And that was good enough for them. They believed her. It was this one time, they'd never been on CPS before. They believed her and they kind of just let her do what she needed to do, if I'm honest. And again, in all fairness to Maria, she was going to leave him. There are signs that she was going to leave him because she rented her own apartment, and her and Judith would spend their daytimes at this apartment, but then would come home in the evenings to be with Joseph. So it isn't known whether Joseph knew about the apartment. This could be one of the reasons he killed them. But she did have this secret apartment that she would go to keep herself and her daughter safe. So she was doing the best that she could under the circumstances. And if you have never been in an emotional or physical relationship that is abusive, please don't comment anything about it because you haven't got a clue what you're talking about. This ended tragically, but it wasn't their fault. I'm just saying that right now. That's just a disclaimer from me personally. I know what I'm talking about, so please don't start with the they should have left. They tried. And then on the 25th of July 1988, Judith was actually meant to meet with a lady called Hanna-Barbera because she was going to appear on their show. She was going to do an animated voice role for their show or their movie. Obviously it came to the time of her appointment and she didn't arrive. They thought it was a bit weird because Judith was always on time for everything. Her mother made sure that she was on time for everything and she was prompt and she was professional. So Hanna-Barbera's people, managers and whatever, directors, tried to make contact with Maria and unfortunately they couldn't make contact. They thought it was odd, but there was nothing really more they could do. They didn't personally know these people, so they could only just assume something that came up and it was left at that. Judith was actually last seen on the morning of the 25th as well. She was riding up and down their street on her bicycle. She was seen by one of the neighbours. She was just a happy-go-lucky little girl. She was just riding her bike and just living her best life, I guess. Judith, her mother and her father were then not seen again until the 28th of July. And one of the reasons that their bodies were actually found was because the neighbour heard a gunshot and called the police. So the police arrived to investigate and they found Judith's body dead in her bed. They found Maria in the hallway just before Judith's bedroom, and they found Joseph in the garage. And one thing that they wanted always to point out is that they also discovered that Judith and Maria's bodies had been covered in gasoline and the house had slightly been set on fire. It wasn't engulfed in flames, but he had tried to set it on fire. After much investigation, they realised that this was a murder-suicide, and obviously they can only really speculate what happened because they don't know, they're not there. But they predict that something happened, there was some kind of disagreement or something happened. He just snapped somewhere, he'd been drinking all day, they know that. They weren't sure, but he ended up shooting Judith in the head, and then Maria, hearing the sound of the gunshot, obviously runs to her daughter's aid and goes to save her daughter, but she is confronted by Joseph in the hallway and he shoots her in the head as well. Then it is assumed through telephone conversations that Joseph then spent the next few days just in the house. He was drinking, he was smashing stuff, and he was just walking around their dead bodies. And at some point he obviously poured gasoline on their bodies and set the house alight. And this is only known because he had a conversation on the telephone with Judith's manager, who had obviously started to wonder, where is Judith? She didn't show up to her meeting with Hanna-Barbera. Where is she? So she made a phone call and Joseph actually answered, and it's not known whether he said, I killed them, but he did say to her, I'm just going to go say goodbye, and then he hung up on her. And then later that day, he went into the garage and he shot himself in the head, and that's where he was found. So that's what they speculated happened. It sounds like that's the kind of thing that would have happened. It sounds correct. I mean, again, I wasn't there, so I don't know. The police weren't there, so they don't know. But this is just from all the evidence they've got and all the pieces they put together to make it into one big jigsaw. Once it was discovered that Judith had obviously been murdered by her father, the country itself was in shock. She was famous. She was a little girl that was going to be absolutely amazing and do amazing things, and all of a sudden her life was cut short, and it was by the person that she's supposed to trust the most. And quite a few people didn't know the abuse was happening either, so that was another shock to the system, to find out that this poor little girl had been suffering for years and years at the hands of her own father, and no matter what her mother did to try and protect her, nothing worked, and they both ended up losing their lives. And that's the tragic thing that I think the whole country could feel. Judith and her mother are actually buried next to each other. Their grave was initially unmarked, but fans pulled together, raised the money and got them a beautiful headstone that I will picture here for you. Absolutely beautiful. It's nice that they're together. Nobody knows where Joseph is buried. Nobody cares where Joseph is buried. I don't care where Joseph is buried. I can rot in hell for all I care. But nobody knows where he's buried, probably because of that exact reason. You know, people would vandalise it and all that kind of thing. It's still today not known where he's buried. I mean, he got away with the crime really, didn't he? He took his own life, so I honestly don't really feel like people care. But at the funeral, it was a very sober occasion. Many of her co-stars that have appeared in the films that she's been in, like Jaws and the cast members from Cheers and all those kind of things, the director that first hired her, they all attended a funeral, and the man that played her father in Jaws 4, I can't remember his name. I didn't write it down either. Can't remember his name. Anyway, he ended up being a pallbearer, so very tragic and just a really sober day. But the weather was beautiful, if that helps. And then her last film that she was ever a part of, so All Dogs Go to Heaven, was released in November of 1989, so 16 months after she was killed. And the director has done many interviews about this, because there was talks of that they weren't going to release it. I will say this, in some of the trailers for All Dogs Go to Heaven, and you can look on YouTube, Judith's name isn't even mentioned, just because they weren't sure how to deal with this kind of thing. At the time, the director had never had to deal with a member of his cast dying whilst they were in production, and this was a child who was murdered as well. So they didn't know how to deal with that. But he did say in many interviews that he personally wanted her to be recognised for the wonderful work that she had done, and he also said that she was a great talent, and it's so sad and it's such a massive loss what the world has lost, because she would be in her 40s now and she would just be like another Barbara Streisand. I think she would just be absolutely wonderful. She'd be fabulous, and it's such a tragic loss that we didn't get to see that, and she was killed by her father, and that's just really sad. And I completely agree with what he was saying, and you can see in the interview how teary he gets. It's just really, really emotional. It's really, really sad, and thankfully the movie did quite well from what I can gather. I mean, like I said before, I really loved it. I had it on video. It wasn't even DVD at the time. It was like video, pop it in the video, rewind it with the remote, like watch it rewind all the way back rather than just press a button and you're back at the start again. Absolutely loved it. I loved the film, and it's just sad that that was the last thing that she got to film. But there is the song, the theme song that was for All Dogs Go to Heaven, is dedicated to Judith, and it's normally at the end of the film. I don't think on the DVD it is on some of them, which is unusual. But at the end of the film, it does say that the film and the song are dedicated to Judith Barsi, and obviously the date she was born and the date she died. And it says, "We will never forget you," or something along those lines, and that's nice. But it's a tragic case, and I also thought it was interesting about the fact that parents could kill a child. I just don't get it. I just don't understand why this happens. This had obviously been a case that had been going on for a while as well, so it was kind of guaranteed to happen, I guess. I mean, he threatened it and then he did it. The guilt that Maria must have felt knowing that he'd shot her daughter, but then she died herself, so I don't know. But anyway, that is the story of Judith Barsi. It's a sad one, and I will obviously have lots of pictures up for her, and just again, like I said before, hold your kids a bit tighter, love them a little bit longer, and just, you know, be kind. Be the kind of parent that you would have wanted. In other words, don't kill your kids. Okay, it's not hard, really. Don't kill your kids. Okay. So, that'll be it for me today. I'll be back with you soon. Please, please, please share, like, comment, subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. Also, thank you for the continued support by everybody that's been supporting me recently. It's been fantastic. All of my friends, all of my family that watch my videos every week, you're amazing, and I love you very, very much. And also, thank you to my editor for my video last week, where he scared the absolute out of me. He's not here today though. I did it while he was at work. How'd you like that? Okay. Okay, so I will see you in the next one. Remember, be safe and don't kill anybody.